thanks to everyone for coming tonight. It's really exciting to get to hear the artists talk more about the process that led them to the work that I'm more familiar with that was included in the exhibition. And also thanks to JD and Alana for organizing these days or events. When Lisa Gold, WPA's executive director, and I first started talking about expanding experimental media, this is actually one of the first places I came to sort of find out what was going on in DC and meet people, so it's great to be back here. It's a great contribution to the community here. As Max mentioned, I'm the program director at Washington Project for the Arts, and the exhibition that he was discussing earlier was part of Experimental Media 2012, which was a program we put on this year with 3 components. In addition to the exhibition, there was also a screening of experimental video work and a workshop series that we organized in partnership with Hack DC, which is a hackerspace in the DC area. The program was developed in partnership with Artisphere, which is a venue in Roslyn, Virginia. It was great working with them. They have an exhibition space and a workshop space, or an education lab, rather, where we were able to hold the workshops. We also worked with the Phillips Collection. They hosted a screening of the videos. So overall, it's been a great collaborative experience. For those of you who aren't familiar with WPA, we are a 36-year-old arts nonprofit in the DC area. We were founded in 1975 by Alice Denny, who was really a pioneer in terms of supporting DC artists. The organization's first home was actually at 1227 G Street, which is not too far from here. They rented a building from the city for $1 a year. Real estate has changed since then. Excuse me, but the art scene here has as well. When WPA was founded, there really wasn't support in the area for local artists. The art scene was really dominated by the major institutions, the big museums, which are amazing, but there weren't that many opportunities for local artists, emerging artists, people working in experimental media in different fields, and WPA really provided that. So we have a long history of presenting work at the intersection of art and technology and presenting artists doing interesting and different things. I was looking through our archives in preparation for tonight and found a few different events that I actually wasn't familiar with. In 1979, we hosted a festival of disappearing arts, which included video installation and sound sculpture. In 1987, we featured an artist named Peter Zent, whose sculpture Crank, which was an interactive sculpture, roamed the streets and beat drums, responding to the sound around it. I unfortunately wasn't able to find images of those. I do have some images, but there we go. Okay, yeah, so this is our building on G Street. I meant to pull that up earlier. And I was very sad I couldn't find images of Crank. But in the early 90s, we also were still doing workshops for artists who were interested in working in art and technology. In 1993 and 1994, WPA hosted a series on new digital video technology. There was a workshop on video editing, digital special effects, and digital animation with the Amiga computer. I wasn't familiar with that. I don't know if anyone in the audience remembers the Amiga. So we've had a long involvement with video art, with installation, with artists working in these new areas. So in 2006, when WPA launched the Experimental Media Series, it was really a continuation of programming the organization had been doing for a long time. When the program began in 2006, it was really focused on video and sound. We were lucky enough to partner with some great institutions between 2006 and 2011. The videos during those years were screened at the Phillips Collection, at the Hirshhorn, at the Corcoran Gallery of Art, and we worked with a lot of different jurors to select those. Video art has been traditionally underrepresented in DC, so it was really a great venue showing a format that wasn't necessarily represented. So we really saw that as something valuable that we wanted to continue, but also really wanted to think of ways to expand on it. We sort of approached it from the perspective of this program's giving space to this underrepresented medium, but what else is going on that people aren't necessarily seeing? And that was what led us to come up with the idea of expanding the program to include an exhibition and the workshop series as well. to really give artists the opportunity to learn these new technologies that they can use in their work. One of the challenges of the program has always, for me at least in the beginning, was the title. The video program was always, or the video and sound program rather, was always referred to as experimental media. And that term might be a little bit vague. It's not, doesn't point to a particular genre in contemporary art. It sort of raises the question of experimental how. You know, because we had different jurors every year, it was interpreted different ways. Some people sort of focused on works that were experimental in their approach to the medium. Others focused on bringing together works that fit well together and fit well in the format. Given the lack of outlets in the area for that kind of work, perhaps the experiment was simply asking if there were artists making work and if there was an audience to see them, in which case the answers were clearly yes and yes. But when we first discussed expanding it, one of our main concerns was how to open it up. Not just expand it to include more work, but provide a venue for experimental work that hadn't fit in the previous format. We had some amazing work over the years. This is a still from a video by Jonathan Monahan, who's a video artist in DC. But we really wanted to be able to present work beyond the video format. So the program this year grew out of these questions, attempting to widen the possibilities for the kind of work we could show. We partnered with Artisphere on the gallery exhibition, and I also sought out Hack DC and worked with them to develop the workshop series. They're a great resource in DC for artists. They're a nonprofit community group that's really devoted to people who want to creatively experiment with technology. I think some Hack DC people have probably presented at Days before. And most of the people involved don't identify as artists, but they're really excited about working with them. So they were a great partner. So that was the format the program took this year. And I think since having the experience of working on these 3 different components and working with Max and Jonah Barker-Cohen, the other curator who was really fantastic, I've come to see the title, which I initially thought of as a little bit of a something to sort of work through, as really a blessing, because it gives us the space to sort of ask what is experimental and sort of change that from year to year. So we can shift from year to year, bringing in new curators, and also makes room for showing new genres of artwork that possibly aren't recognizable at this point. So a few years from now, whatever artists are doing, if they're working with social media, making smartphone apps, whatever is happening in terms of art and technology, experimental media sort of is an umbrella that will encompass that. Obviously, the phrase experimental in terms of art doesn't necessitate an involvement with technology, but I think in terms of moving forward with what artists are doing, it's a definite important element of artists who are doing work that is provocative, that is cutting edge. I think for me, as someone who works on the programming side of things, it's exciting because I see technology as really providing artists with a new set of tools to create work that challenges our expectations of what art is, how it should behave, where you should encounter it, and what it expects from us as viewers. One of the challenges with the show this year was really that a lot of the work was meant to be interactive. And so you're basically encouraging your audience to break the cardinal rule of the gallery space, which is normally don't touch the art. So figuring out how to navigate that boundary of you can touch the art, but only in certain ways. You're being invited to sort of do something that normally in a gallery or museum you can't, or you're not supposed to, but sort of how to contain that so that you can do that without necessarily damaging the work. But on the other hand, I think that's a really valuable line to have to navigate because it sort of questions our relationship with art and what we expect from it and how we think we're supposed to behave around it. As someone who works in arts administration and programming, the other challenge with technology that we sort of encountered in this show is that I think as Max sort of mentioned in his introduction, that artists who work with this are creating these things not only sort of in their studio, but then also to exist for the prolonged period of an exhibition. And so it's a shift in the mindset of gallery workers and arts administrators going from you put the show up and it's paintings on a wall and that's it, to you have all these different objects and moving parts going on, and you really have to pay attention to what's happening in the space and how people are interacting with the work, and you know, on a day-to-day basis maintaining it, which is it's a challenge, you know, for us as well, but I think is another sort of valuable experience of being more conscious about what's going on. At the same time that I think using technology can really challenge artists and our experience of art. I think artists really have a lot to bring in terms of their criticality towards the way we talk about new technology. Bradford Barr, who is the vice president, I believe, of HackTC, who helped us with the workshops, told me that he really loves working with artists because they'll come to help for him to help. They'll come to him for help on a project, and they basically don't know what they can't do. So they come and say, I want to do this, and maybe it's something that's really difficult, maybe it's something that's really easy, but it sort of pushes him to expand his horizons as a technologist and as someone who works with different technologies. So I think in terms of both the way artists use technology and the way they're interested in commenting on how it affects our lives, they bring a really valuable perspective to that conversation. I had a few images from the show I wanted to bring up. This is the Anxiety book by Pete Frosty, which was, I think, one of the more sort of smaller, a little quieter works in the show. But it is a book that is on the subject of anxiety. And it opens, but it has a motion sensor, and when you approach it, it shuts very quickly. I wish I had video of it. And this is what Pete warned me before the exhibition, that he'd had some problems in past shows with people sort of thinking that they should be able to open the book back up after it had closed, which I think is one of those, you really don't. For me, thinking that someone would naturally approach the podium and try to open it is a little strange, but I think seeing it move, that's sort of your impulse. And this is Play It Forward by Hiroshi Jacobs. Hiroshi has an interesting background because he's an artist, but also a designer. And on this piece, he had a couple of collaborators who were had more of a computer background who had helped him. But you could interact with it and move your hands and wave your arms in front of it, and it would light up. But at the same time, as you interacted with it, it was hooked up to his website, and it counted the number of interactions and donated money to a charity based on how much it was interacted with. So this is one where then you could go online and see how much money had been donated, and the charity was Kaboom, which does work with playgrounds, building playgrounds in cities across America. This is K. David Fong. This was one of the pieces that wasn't directly interactive. You weren't supposed to touch or sit on it, but was more about the way it sort of altered your perception of space, which I think, in terms of not necessarily taking interactivity so literally, was a good contribution to the show. This is Steven's pixel art photo booth, which you just heard him discuss. So those are just a few of the images from the exhibition. It's been nice to have this opportunity to kind of look back on it, look back on the program, and hear the artists talk a little bit more. We're very excited to keep moving forward in this area, and are actually right now planning for Experimental Media 2013. So we'll definitely keep the Dazer audience updated with that. And thanks again for coming tonight.